saying is not going on record. Mr. Baijayant Panda, please be brief.
Thank
please.
you, sir. Sir, this is a government. Sir, thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak. I hope you will allow the same principles of time to me that you have allowed to earlier speakers. Sir, this is a government that has prided itself in the past and claimed to represent the Aam Aadmi, and yet it is the average citizen that is suffering the most from the current economic conditions. If you look at inflation, sir, we can talk about various categories, but let us look at vegetables. They today cost almost 50% more than last year. Not 15%, 50%. The government says that when onion prices have crossed 70 rupees per kilo, that this is a result of hoarding. It's possible there is some hoarding, but this is not limited to onions. These price increases are applicable to vegetables across the board. And sir, the rupee having crossed 65 to the dollar, the impact is going to be felt only in the coming months. Having crossed 65 is what I said, 66. The amount of petroleum products that we import is itself going to have a huge impact because of the lower rupee, and it is going to impact inflation and impact the common man, which is perhaps why we don't hear so much from this government about its so-called concern for the Aam Aadmi anymore. Sir, when we talk about inflation, we have talked, earlier speakers have talked about the onion prices, about the rupee devaluation, about petrol prices. I'm sure this House, many members must have heard of the anecdote, the joke going around, that these three commodities are racing each other as to see which will cross 100 rupees first. And the situation does not look very rosy, sir. The reality is that there are fundamental underlying problems that this government has not been addressing. There has been policy paralysis which has led to this situation. And I must point out that one of the Honorable Finance Minister's cabinet colleagues today has been quoted in the newspapers as saying that economic policy making is not like a one-day cricket match, it is not like a T20 game. I agree, sir. I think the Honorable gentleman has just left the House. I agree, sir. This economic mess did not happen because of 20 weeks of bad policy making. This economic mess did not happen because of 1 month of bad governance. It has been many years of accumulated policy paralysis, many years of accumulated bad governance that has led us to this situation. Sir, I must point out that the Honorable Finance Minister's position is unenviable. When he came back to handle this important portfolio last year, in some quarters there was a sense of relief that after several years of misgovernance, perhaps things would be put back on track. But it's a year later and the situation has gone from bad to worse. Sir, many of his cabinet colleagues at various times have sat here in this House and given us assurances that they were taking steps to set the ship right. But in fact, they have not been. The real problem is that no one arm of this government knows what the other arm is doing. In fact, you could say that the various ministries have been working at cross purposes. If you look at what the Environment Ministry is doing, if you look at what other ministries are doing, they're working at cross purposes. And it is the job of the government, it is the job of the Prime Minister, and with the help of important cabinet ministers to sort this out. That has simply not been done. We have discussed many times in this House how the rate of building infrastructure has gone down, how the rate of construction of highways per day has been missing targets and has been reducing. And yet, what we have heard for several years now, that it is always someone else's fault. It is sometimes foreign countries' fault. As has been pointed out, if foreign countries' economic policies mean that they are doing badly, we are also hurt. If they are doing well, we are still hurt. Sometimes it is the judge's fault. Sometimes it is coalition government's fault. Sir, I must point out that this country has not seen a single-party government for almost a quarter century. There has been coalitions involved for almost a quarter century in running this country. Why is it only in the last few years that all these blames are being laid at the feet of coalitions or the judiciary or foreigners? I, for once, would like to hear somebody in the government say a mea culpa, point out what they have done wrong. We can all talk about what they have done wrong. I have just mentioned a few of those things, but the government's credibility would be much better if they acknowledged that they made some mistakes. They have increased government spending hugely without increasing the economy. And sir, they have got support from the opposition. Not always, but most times they have got support for the increased expenditure. but they have not been able to take the steps, or they have decided not to take the steps knowingly, which would grow the economy, which would improve our economic conditions, and yet they keep blaming everybody else. Sir, I would like to point out that while this is the national scenario, there are several states which continue to do well. My state, for instance, sir, Odisha, the economic growth rate today, this year, is double of the national average. There are other states like Bihar and Gujarat and others which are continuing to do well. And these states are reducing poverty at a faster rate than the national average. And I'm just going by the government statistics, by the Planning Commission statistics. We can argue whether the poverty line is too low or not. Some of us believe it is too low. The level should be set higher. But going by this government's own statistics, why is it that several states continue to do well? And something that this government has not figured out, that governance matters, and they have not been able to deliver governance. I would like to cite one more such example. In the discussions earlier, it was pointed out that to tackle the deficit, the current account deficit, certain FDI was required to bolster the rupee and to help the deficit. So this is a proposal that has been in discussions for 7 years. And some of these items on which the government has taken a decision only within the last 1 month have nothing to do with parliamentary approval. They are things that the government has done with a stroke of a pen and could have done years ago. And there was no political opposition to some of these decisions. The opposition came from lobbyists. The opposition came from cronies who would benefit less if these rational economic steps would have been taken earlier. So this is not a government about the Aam Aadmi. This is a government by the cronies, for the cronies, and of the cronies. The chickens are coming home to roost, and the problems that we are facing today are because of so many years of misgovernance. And let us not try to fool this House by always blaming somebody else. I urge you, sir, you know what needs to be done. I urge you to take the decisions urgently. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Shri Thambidurai.